Hello Dragon Age fans, and I'm here in a bit of a different capacity, technologically speaking, because of course, again, still no Mac. It's got a bit of a cold at the moment, as have I. So we're just looking into trying to fix that problem up. And in the meantime, I'm trying to record via this means, trying to improve the sound quality a little bit with one of these type setups. So, anyway, we'll press on and tell you what happened in the next session while we're still waiting for the technological mishaps to re-happen. Okay, here we go. So, the two golems are down. Zelkima's fled. Costello has been stolen away by Squire and stabbed through. Now, Costello is dying, and in his dying moments, he clutches the Jade Serpent close to him. And at that very moment, he becomes attuned to it. That's right, attunement to the Jade Serpent, in Costello's case, is going to act as effectively his level 6 specialization. And he gains a revival ability, which again uses no mana, but you know, and can summon 2 small vipers a day. And I think there was, immunity to poison. So really good stuff there. Mechanically, you can look at something like this and say, "Oh gosh, that's quite overpowered, isn't it?" But then look at it from the point of view that these are very specifically targeted things that person's immune from. They still have huge weaknesses in other areas that can be exploited by the right kind of foe, and that's what life is really like. You know, there's always someone that could come along that's about to knock you down a peg or two. So he clutches this thing close to him, and normally you can't do a revival on yourself, but because it's the moment of his attunement, and because this was all sort of happening sort of in an out of combat sequence in actuality, he was stolen away by a roll, but from there he became attuned to the power of Yid, coursed through him and healed him miraculously, until he's just going to end up with a nice big scar across his reptilian scales on his body, showing where something did him through. But of course he's unconscious and healing and not dead, but Squire doesn't know that, because he's put a sword right through him and kicked him off the sword into the corner. That's going to kill anyone, you know. He's never had someone not die to a full penetration like that. So to him, Costello's dead. He's carrying on, trying to get ahead of the party to set a trap, and he's decided who he wants next, and it's Tanador. So then the party decide to search around. They found a piece of paper on the floor, and it's got a 4-number code on it. So they keep that. They check the office that's in there, and the office shows a map of Freeport with some X's on it, showing places where they've worked it out, places where the bombs are going to go off effectively. And they found that one of them is Lady Elise's house, and one of them is the Temple of the God of Knowledge. And then they go on downstairs into the basement, not realising that Costello's not with them, mind you. And the way I ran this was to have the miniatures on the whiteboard. So we've got the whiteboard mapped out of the basement area, and I specifically put down the correct miniatures, purposely leaving Costello out. And one of the players, he even told me afterwards, he was going to mention that the Costello model wasn't there, but thought I'd just forgotten, and it sort of escaped his mind. But yeah, it hadn't escaped anything. It was on purpose, of course. And I wanted to see if the party would realise. And of course I'd already spoken to Laurie about this, sort of nailing it and getting it right, and I wasn't penalising him on experience either. He was going to gain the full experience of everything because he was participating in a GM run something, you see. So anyway, they get down there and they find these big double doors with these numbers placed around them, so that they've got the code, but the door is slightly ajar. See, we're going out of module now. Out of module, and this is because of Squire. And they come close to it. All of them crowd up around the door. And Carrack's at the doorway, Blacktail's near the doorway, and Tanador's sort of in front of the door. And guess who's inside? Somehow made his way inside. Squire. But they don't see him until it's too late. And then this black shape falls down from the ceiling, just like a blur. Yeah, jumps out through the doorway, kicks Carrack with one foot, sends him sprawling backwards, flings the door open, lunges past Blacktail, grabs Tanador, and pulls him into the room. Tanador tries to go get weight to make himself harder to pull. He grabs Tanador around the throat quickly and yanks him by the throat, which is going to basically break his neck and choke him to death. So Tanador then has to give assisted pushback with his feet to not be choked out. And he's being pulled in. Blacktail tries getting his head through the door quickly. Carrack's trying to get us charge up for a spell. Squire kicks Tanador into the room and pulls the door shut. Blacktail's head's going to get torn straight off, so he has to pull it back. And the door slams shut and locks. Tanador is trapped in the room with Squire, one-on-one. Now, earlier upstairs in the warehouse, they'd had a bit of a look around in some of the other rooms, and there was a box with ales in, and they did a strength might test to sort of break it open. And the real thing, and they wanted to sample it, of course, being who they are. But the thing is that the ale wasn't actually the transported stored goods. It was the poison that was hidden in a secret compartment there. And in this case, doing too well on a test would actually go against them, because I had to check with Tanador going in being all barbarian smash if he was going to break through into the secret container and release the poison so that it contaminated the ale. Well, he struck it hard, but he didn't quite strike it hard enough to contaminate, so they didn't get poison drinking it, but they were oblivious and didn't know this until they've watched this video now. Hey, there you go, daft group, just missing death by a hair's breadth each time. They're mad. But one of the other things in one of the side rooms was a selection of spices, and Tanador kept some of them in hand. Oh, I'll have some of these spices and keep them on me. He's thinking of blinding someone. Anyway, go back into current time now, back into the room. Tanador's still got those spices in hand. Squire's coming for him, and poof, he throws them straight into Squire's face. Now, they both rolled really well on initiative. They both rolled like a 22 on initiative. So it came down to other factors, and Tanador got to go first. And threw those spices in his face. So I had Squire run a Constitution Stamina, and his final result, all told, was 8. And then I did a d6 check for how many rounds that he was going to have this spices in his eyes, and even though it's not hurting him, he doesn't feel pain in the conventional sense. He's sort of trying to get it out, and he's waving his head around and trying to clear the powder from his sight, and he can't fight properly. There's a huge debuff on his chance to hit, and that made all the difference. OMG. He's coming at Tanador, trying to attack and missing, and Tanador's just taking advantage, carving him up. He got a few good hits in on Tanador in the end, And eventually, once the stuff had cleared out of his eyes, he started getting these beautiful attacks in on Tanador, huge masses of damage coming in. But just on the round on which Tanador managed to finish him, okay, before I'd pre-rolled it up, and Squire was going to put out incredible amounts of damage. He was going to do like 6 stunt points of mad damage, along with like lockdowns, dirty fighting, assassin's extra backstab, auto backstab, like just crazy stuff happening, and it was going to account to like probably 40 to 60 damage if he hadn't have stopped him there and then. But of course, this stuff in his eyes, Tanador was able to take him apart all the time he was debuffed during that period, and it was enough. And Squire hit the deck, and then that wasn't good enough for Tanador. So he decides he's going to lop him off at the knees. So he takes his sword to his legs and starts hacking and hacking and hacking. Now, meanwhile, as this is happening, the group outside decide, gee, we're going to have to get in there and help Tanador. We don't know what's going on. We can just hear a bunch of muffled shouting and fighting. So they punch the code in, and everything goes wrong, because there's a sudden flash, and suddenly a creature appears, summoned. And what I've done here is I've gone into Josh Jarman's Midgard Age Bestiary, and pulled out a carrion beetle. So it's the one that can like spit acid and do the whole acid attack thing, and like debuff your armor. That's really good permanently, sort of thing, until you get it fixed. And you know, having to make them do an armor fix is always good to spend the money. So they had to fight that. They had to deal with that, and it was about then they realised, where's Costello? Wait a minute, where's Costello? And Laurie said, exactly, where is Costello? And then it all came out, oh god, we're one man down and we're trying to fight this thing. So, you know, they're struggling against this thing, and it's spitting acid and hitting multiple people, and globules of attack, and hissing, and armour's being burnt through. And Tanador's finished off Squire inside and hacked his legs off at the knees, and just left him there, bleeding out. And he looks around for a way out of the room and can't find one. And they're still fighting this carrion beetle. And they're doing all right. They're holding their own against it. But it is putting out some nice damage. And the way it can use its acidic bile attacks is really quite devastating for Ashard, who doesn't have like full plate armor anyway. So it's working its way down on him quite nicely, and it's splashing the whole group in one go, kind of thing. Meanwhile, at this point, Blacktail's buggered off. He's gone upstairs to try and look for Costello. He's off doing his own thing, sort of thing, you know. So he's avoiding all this fight. So it really is just left with Karak and Ash trying to fight this thing. Now, Tanador eventually finds a crank in the opposite wall of the door, and cronks the crank, and the door opens, and Tanador comes out of the room. And he charges straight into this carrion beetle and assists the group, and together they finally get it down. Even Tanador gets a bit of an armor damage in doing so, but you know, they've beaten the thing. And while the fight's happening, behind Tanador's back, they hear a sound, which is click. The door is shut again, because it's on one of them sort of like spring hinge things, very heavy set things. Oh. So that's nice. It's locked again. So they finish off the carrion beetle, and they decide, right, okay, that seemed to be magically summoned somehow, so we've put the code in correctly, and it summoned that. So if we put the same code in again, we're probably going to summon another one again. And yes, that is how it's going to work. In fact, if they'd have kept putting the code in, they would keep summoning another one until they just ended up with however many attempts they tried to put the code in. That many carrion beetles. it would get a bit overwhelming in the end, because you can imagine like a little procession line of them all spitting this acid stuff, and it would be exploding on the group. Explode, armor down, wear them right down, and the damage would only increase over time. It would be incredible. It would escalate. So yeah, they said to Tamlin, "Oh, you bloody daft bugger. Well, you know, I was attacked by Squire in there," he said. "But, you know, I couldn't think straight. The door shut." And anyway, Carrack came up with a good idea of saying, "Let's put the code in backwards." That's exactly what you needed to do. I always say, these guys, you know, they've been around too long. They've been around in the business too long. They're too experienced with this crap. They're getting too old for this shit. And yeah, it was quite right. You had to put the code in backwards, as Alkema had written it left to right that way, but it was intended to be right to left as a security measure, so that, you know, only he will know that, but, you know, really clever players will figure it out. And we have really clever players. So they put the code in backwards, and it opens just fine. And there's nice big pools of blood on the floor, and there's no Squire. And they say, "Well, does it look like he's dragged himself off to a wall or something like that?" And I said, "No, you can see the beginnings of the blood, like blood drag stains going along the floor, and then they stop at some point, somewhere in the centre of the room-ish." So they start thinking, maybe some sort of portal or something as he dragged himself along. Of course, there's another possibility: has someone appeared in the room and dragged him into some sort of portal or something like that. Because, you know, if he's dead, was he actually dead? Is dead? Has he reanimated to drag himself to safety, or is something or someone appeared to recover him? That's the question. Okay, so after that, they decide, well, we need to find Costello. Oh, actually, no. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They want to find Costello, but, you know, that's still going to have to wait, because the actual proper contents of that room needs to be examined. And they said, well, okay, look at what's in that room there. 5 jars. Now, they already had all the intel about this. They'd already been told that the magical mechanism trigger thing on the jar to make it go splodey is to release the lid. Open it up, and that makes it go boom. So, they're examining the jars. They go into the room, and they say, well, that's 5 jars right there. We've got it. We've seen one go boom. So that's actually 2 unaccounted for. So those 2 that were marked on the map that we spoke of earlier, Lady Elise's and the Temple of the God of Knowledge, are going to be the 2 unaccounted for, which means they've already left. Oh dear. Anyway, the group then come up with this clever idea of saying, well, how about we at least deal with these jars so that they can't use them? That's a good idea, isn't it? Yeah! So they say, I know, let's empty the explosive stuff inside and put dirt in its place. And then, however they are delivering it, in fact, the delivery is by a courier service, Rentax runners, and they've got some intel on that from the office as well, by the way, so they've got a lead to go on. That he commonly uses Rentax runners. It's in his ledgers. It's Alkema's ledgers from his office there. That's going to be an important lead that the party will be able to follow up on soon. And they decided, okay, we'll fill them with dirt. So Tanadal picks up a jar and says, I'm having a peep inside. I said, how are you doing that? Describe exactly what you're doing. He said, I'm picking up the jar. I said, yeah. He said, I'm taking the lid off. And I said, alright, stop there. Oh, God. It was actually, even before he took the lid off, Carrack had said to him, wait a minute, those things are explodey, you know. They're triggered to go off when the lid opens. We figured that much out before. He didn't hear that. He didn't take any notice of that. He's off in barbarian world inside his own little head. You know, he's off speaking to squirrels and cats and things, having fun conversations with them and doing what he wants to do. So he opens the jar and it explodes. Now remember, this is a basement room underground, so it's at least a controlled explosion. But it goes up, boom, sends Tanador flying backwards. Okay, the shock of it. Tanador gets up and tries to do a runner. The whole group tried to do a runner away from it. They all get damaged big time. And then, unfortunately, there's a chain reaction. And the other 4 jars in the room also go off. And the end result of these masses of D6s of damage against the group was incredible. Tanador's running for his life and jumping over explosions and manages to drag himself up and away from it all. His grenade at his belt at least didn't go off. That was one small mercy. And Carrack goes down. He's dying from the blast. And Tanador had to get over there and give him a health potion. Try and chuck that down his throat while he's unconscious. And again, I do the usual Constitution stamina test to see if he's going to choke on it. And no, he's fine. Of course, if he choked on it, it would probably make his dying situation worse. So that's always nice. And they got him standing again, and Carrack had a real go at him, and the whole group were just laughing and laughing and laughing at how silly Tanador is that he did that. Ash, by the way, was almost dead. Ash was put down to 2 health, 2 HP left, so he was almost copped it. But the thing was that Tanador's so daft that he's that daft that he can't even die properly. That's half the problem. He gets himself into all of these scrapes, you know, and he's the elect of the sky as well with it. So he's that mad that he's the one least affected by the stupid crap that he's causing. And there was just so much laughing at the table about this. It was good times. It was good times. Everyone was getting red in the face from laughter. And anyway, they pull themselves together. They use all the healing kits as injury kits and get themselves back on track, and then head back upstairs to try and find Costello. And they find Costello unconscious, and they bring him round eventually. And he explains that he was attacked by this shadowy figure, and they explain that it's Squire, and they've done him in now, and he's disappeared, and probably to return another day. And yeah, the lead they've got to go on is Rentax runners. So they decide to go to the base, talk the guy into helping them. It's very early in the morning for him, but they want horses as well, and he tries to arrange something and tries to arrange some horses for them to try and get to the 2 locations in time. And he explains who the couriers are after checking his ledgers, and describes the couriers of the 2 places and said that they're just young teens and they've gone out this morning already. They've already left so that they can have a good chance to get to it. And time's running out. I'm timing how long the party's taking in doing all of this, and their time is running out. So I'm measuring time, speeding things through, and saying, well, to get from A to B here is going to take 7 minutes, so I take that off the time. And so, you know, 2 hours before the bombs are designated to go off, which is written on the list for, they can see the timings when they're supposed to go off. You know, it becomes 1.5, becomes 1 eventually, and then they finally get some horses and try riding. So I get them to do horse riding, dexterity riding skill checks, and they decide they're going to split up. So that Carrack and Tanador are going to go to Lady Elise's, and Ash and Costello are going to head to the Temple of the God of Knowledge. Of course, Costello, as his capacity of Thuron, would want to stop that by any means. So they roll great. They ride there in time, and They stop the courier, they intercept it. Thuron, of course, is able to receive the package directly, being, you know, the high priest as he is, and that's it. You know, that's one of them recovered. Now, at Lady Elise's, Tanador just about makes it in time. Karak only rolls an 11 for his horse ridery check, and it's very, very delayed. And when he was going to be delayed, I asked Tanador, look, Karak's flagging behind. Do you wait for him or not? And he decided, no, I'm racing ahead. So this is very, very important, because it means that Tanador's going to arrive at the scene on his own, and there's going to be an unknown amount of time before Karak arrives. It's always fun, isn't it? Isn't it fun? Because if they'd have waited at Karak's pace, they would have missed the bomb, and it would have been game over. I can tell you that now. So Tanador did the only thing he could to stop that bomb blowing up Lady Elise. So Tanador arrives in time to see the courier at the door, handing the, or heading towards the building at least. He's about to try and cut the courier off, and Zalkima comes in and attacks. And eventually what the courier is going to do is going to go up the steps, up to the house. The butler's going to be summoned. The butler's going to take the thing in and give it to Lady Elise, and then it will blow up inside the house, and it will be lovely. But Zalkima attacks Tanador before he can stop it. He's reappeared. That's the one. Lady Elise is the one that he wants definitely to go off. So he's there to make sure it darn well does. And you know, Tanador's got no spices this time, and he's putting him in these like dirty fighting lockdowns, and just keeping him permanently stunned in, and putting some great damage on him, and just doing everything that a rogue should really do. And it just demonstrates the actual power of a rogue, how powerful they can be against a warrior, because he kicked Tanador's ass. Now Tanador was down, and having the elect of the sky as he is, then he can't actually die. He went to 0, and it was a pulled killing blow. He's sort of like even unconsciously doing it. Any foe is. And there he is, just lying there, trying to feign death. And I have him, at that point, eventually, time passes. He can see the package is being delivered. Zalkima's watching to see his scheme go off. He thinks Tanador's finished and just dying at his feet. Or dead at this point. I asked Tanador, look, you're not dead, okay? You've become conscious again. Are you going to get back up with 1 health? And he said, no, I'm bloody well not. Is Karak here yet? And I said, no, he's not here yet. And he said, right, I'm going to continue to feign death. He plays a whale hunter, so he should know all about that. And I had him do a roll to try and convince the guy, or to not make him suspicious that he was still alive, to try and not look alive, not look like he's breathing, and all these kind of things. Oh, there's my phone. That's nice. And he succeeded that roll. This is a good job he succeeded it, because he could have ended up on the end of coup de grace if it all right there. And eventually, just in the nick of time, Karak appears, and I'm just like looking at the frowns, and I'm thinking, wow, Karak's literally got one window now to stop this before the butler takes it off. So he does his party trick. He shouts, stops the butler at the doorway. The couriers run back down the stairs again, and he sets off a mind blast on the butler, knocks the jar straight out of his hands, and it falls forwards. The butler goes backwards into the house. The jar falls onto the steps and begins rolling and bouncing, bounce, bounce, bounce down the stairs. And then one final big bounce. Karak gives it a nice little sort of like magical skirmishy nod. Sometimes in certain situations I will allow a player to run skirmish as his stunts if for magic casting if he's not actually using any other magic listy stunts, because it can be quite funny as well. And so there are, like with the stalactite, which fell, and he changed its falling pattern there. I mean, so something like that is a great use of it. So nudge this thing to head straight towards Zalkima and Tanadal. And Zalkima sees this thing, and you imagine like a slow motion thing. Zalkima's like, looks up in slow motion. And Jar's coming at him. And Tanadal's like pretending to be dead, and he even looks up at the Jar coming. He's like, and you can imagine slow motion Zalkima hears that and looks down at Tanadal, goes, and Tanadal instead is just like pointing up, and and then one last little skirmish, pop the lid off. Straight on Zalkima, and boom. So it just blows straight up on a completely unprepared Zalkima, leaves him as a pair of smoking boots, and Tanadal, wow. So Tanadal is affected by this. He's lying down, so he avoids a lot of the blast and the shrapnel and stuff like that. So that's good at least. And Zalkima's above him, but he takes enough to now be dying again. So Karak comes along and heals him up, pumps all of his healing magic straight into him, and puts him back on his feet again. So like his revival and all this good stuff. But it needed quite a lot of overhealing to get him even standing again, so he had to burn through some considerable mana. So anyway, that's Zalkima dead. They've accounted for the Jars. Yay, they are heroes. So they stay around in the city for a bit and try and look into this Stein thing, and they find, the Stein that was stolen, missing. Tanadal lost. Karak Stein, damn it. Oh yes, that old chestnut. And so they go back to the Gold Den and finally speak to the guy, because it's a Tuesday or whatever the days of the week are here. I've got it in the book somewhere. But okay, so and they say, oh yeah, when you guys were in, it was a swag fest. That's when it was. Okay, yeah, it was a swag fest. And that's the thing that happens once a year, where they celebrate a huge, great booty collection from the two Sea Lords, Drac and Francisco at the time. After this was before Francisco was terribly betrayed at sea by Drac and killed. So they still celebrate this thing of this just huge plunder that the Freeport pirates managed to take, and they just have all these fun games and events and things. So they're hanging around at Swagfest, trying to hope that the lead will come up for the Stein. Anyway, in doing so, there's a sort of thing going on where there's a captain up on stage hosting the event, and he's a bit of a character, and an assassin tries to kill him, and Karak sort of gets involved and stops the assassin, fires a bit of magic off to knock her down and point people in her direction, and they grab her, and that's that seemingly. During this period also, Duncan has appeared in Freeport along with the other wardens. And he's said, he's given Karak a right good telling off for what, the revival of Gabe thing. He said, look, it's very dangerous, it's untested, you're not really supposed to do that. And he said, well, it was conscription. He said, yes, but, from death, this could have unknown consequences for the future. Therefore, Gabriel is being escorted by the wardens and he's being taken to the main command in the north, where he will be tested, and we will see if there is any way to train him and make a proper warden out of him, even though he's now gone through the trials and passed, because he's blind, and we need to check. So they're going to look at training him and making sure that everything's all right. So yes, he's going to be probably trained in blind fighting by Warden High Command. Yeah, that's cool. The other thing that Duncan had to tell Carrack was an interesting backstory thing. He said, look, he's done a bit of digging into Carrack. The Dwarf Shapers of Orzammar had recollected records of Carrack's father from when he brought him in as a babby, because Carrack was given to the Dwarfs of Orzammar at birth, handed in, and it was sort of an unknown story behind it. You know, who was his father? Why did he do that? And some of the dwarfs somewhere have records of it. So he's found all the history out about it, about his father, and he's come to Carrack while he's there and told him about it and said, look, here's the truth of the matter. Your father brought you to Orzammar in the hopes, he thought, of saving you. He was a circle mage of Navarra. He was also in the death mage cult, and they're sort of like on the edge of practicing necromancy, kind of. And remember, in Navarra they mummify corpses, and so they do some unnatural processes. The Mortalitasi, they are called. They're a sort of secretive specialist order within the mages. But yes, he was a circle mage, and through his Mortalitasi conjurations, divinations, scrying, he had called on certain powers that had that uncanny knack of latching onto him and cursing him. And so there was a particular demon that had latched onto him, and it wouldn't rest, it wouldn't be sated until it got him. And it was too powerful for him to deal with into the Fade. He couldn't go into the Fade, obviously, and deal with it, and it wouldn't come out of the Fade. It was just waiting there for him, and he had future scryed, thus making his situation even worse, into his soon-to-be born son, and saw the future held that he was going to be a great mage, that he was going to be extremely powerful. But the problem is that during his harrowing, the demon, having not got at Rylan, Carrack's father, the Navarran mage, would want to go after Carrack instead because of the blood link. So that when Carrack would do his harrowing, that demon would additionally be waiting there to jump him while he's trying to do it. So it's a very good job he's, that things happen this way, because he wouldn't have got past the harrowing stage. He would have been probably killed or possessed, and a Templar would have had his head off, and that would have been the end of it. But Rylan saw all of this, and so knew that even though he was a circle mage, his own son was going to have to be an apostate. So for protection, and because he's going to be very, very powerful, and the dwarves are very anti-magical, he decided to put them with them. That would be the most safest keeping, and they're underground, away, out of sight. So he left Carrack with the dwarves, paid them well, and they kept the records of this. Now, from future thinking into it, we can then conversely project that maybe Rylan is now deceased, because Carrack's already gone into the Fade. There was a time when Eldrick pulled them in, for example, and nothing happened. There was no demon waiting for him. So we can suggest that maybe the demon's already been sated. But Karak's response to that was, yes, but for how long? So now he's got this whole backstory question mark thing about his Nevarran roots, being a death mage, being a member of the Mortalitasai. The other thing to tell you about Freeport is, do you remember when Karak made inquiries to Eldrick saying, oh, I want to be, what about being trained as a blood mage? You know, I've had a taste of the power and it's good. You know, I've brought someone back to life. And Eldrick's response was at the time, you'll have to suffer a lot more pain before you're ready. You know, you shall know more pain. You shall spill more blood. Then you will be ready to be trained. And one bit of advice that he's got for Karak is one way that he can begin his training prematurely, and that is to start spilling his own blood when casting magic. So any of the set 2 spells, if he wants to stabilize them now, he need only spend the same amount of mana in health as well, and it cannot miscast. That's the technique that he has been shown before he leaves the shores of Freeport, so that he can continue his downward projection into cursed territory. And it seems that it was already waiting for him. He's going down the same path as his father, the same path as Rylan Malkaeth. So then, anyway, back into the Swagfest thing that's going on. The captain pulls out a great big dire rat thing and says, right, you lot, first one to catch it is going to win all the booty. And throws it off into the crowd, and the crowd goes crazy and says, and it's worth more alive than it is dead. The crowd chasing it. Karak goes after it and he starts mind blasting the thing, which knocks the whole crowd down in huge waves, and he's trying to chase the rat and it knocks more crowd down, and he's knocking kids down, and they're chucking people out of the way and running after this rat thing, and they follow it all the way into these the bad districts, whatever they're, the sort of slum type districts, and it jumps in through a window. Now this rat is being guided by a force, because it's an animal to animal communication guided force. It's something in nature is actually forcing this rat's course in this direction, but the rat doesn't realize it, and the party don't realize it. So they in turn, because they're following the rat, are being also manipulated. So they go into this building, into this basement area where the rat's gone, and they can hear the squeaking of the rat the other side of a door, and like this crunching sounds and horrible things. And they open the door, ready for anything, and they see the rat is being feasted upon by a giant spider, and he's got these massive webs up in the place, and there are these cocoons of people, humanoids, down in the place too. And the spider speaks to them and says, he actually speaks to them and says, ah, I've been waiting for you. We have much to talk of. Karak just starts blasting him. Mind blasts him, spins him on his web, starts hitting him with lightning, and all this gunk stuff explodes out of his body, and he tries shouting back at them, no, don't make me kill you. Stop what you are doing, Karak. See sense. It's Karak there that's just attacking. At this point, Costello steps forward and puts a hand in front of Karak and says, no, wait. And Costello, as a character, won't like Karak. He's not going to like him, because Karak's getting darker and darker and darker, and Costello is he's a force of light, he's a force of goodness. And so he's not going to like the things that Karak does, and like that little betrayal thing of the Mercs, and actions and behaviour like that. So he blocks Karak and says, no, listen, he's trying to speak to you. Hear him out first. And the spider's, he's wounded. But he says, I will have to get my strength back now on these meals. But I have been sent by the lady, the mother, the primal mother of all spiders. Do you remember Karak's Grey Warden dream? Wow, it's coming off here right now. This is where it's paying off. So what's happened is, the truth of the matter is, when the party came in and disturbed the nest of the Blood Reaver primal mother of spiders, the ancient one, the Darkspawn also found her, and they decided, right, Archdemon's going to send some Genlocks in, and we're going to just attack over them. And so he knew, the Archdemon knew exactly what he was doing. Just some simple Genlocks, just a horde of them. So they fight her children, and they finally make their way to her, sort of, and they bring the tainted food down through the chain. And some of her children feast on the Genlocks, and she tries to stop them, but it's too late. And some of her children get the taint, and then some of her children turn on her, and she fights them, and they bite her, and more Genlocks get in, and they attack her, and she kills them and kills them and kills them and webs them up. But she, through the course of all of this, has similarly become infected. And this is all because the party went in that room and set her off. They set her off, they uncovered her, and they let the Darkspawn know she was there. And the plan is that, give her the taint. She's an ancient one, a primal mother of spiders that is now tainted, and she's starting to go mad. She's starting to go insane, and with the last of her sanity, her normal strength, she sends one of the strongest of her children, gives one of those children much of her strength so that he can travel, thus weakening her to the effects of the whole taint and everything, and goes to try and find the group that fought her before, that uncovered her, that are responsible for this. That's what this spider has done. And he said, look, I've come here because she has asked for your assistance. You must save her from herself now. She is tainted by the Genlocks. And that was just the first step. She will now be insane and will probably try and kill you on sight. But her last message to tell you was to come find her and destroy her. That was her last sane order. To tell this giant spider, to warn the party to come kill her before it's too late. What do you mean before it's too late? And it started to dawn on Karak, I think. She's a female. Step 2 is to send Herlock Alpha, and multiple ogres to the zone. This is a high priority place for the Darkspawn to be. They want to capture her, further corrupt her, and turn the primal mother of spiders into a brood mother. That's right, the party are looking at the potential of a new kind of Darkspawn, one that is created, born of a brood mother spider. Now you just imagine how nasty that would be. And the way they would look would be sort of red in colour, like a spider, but with lots of spikes and things on them, and a real desiccated look to them, much like the Archdemon is like a desiccated dragon. So it's pretty bad. Those Darkspawn have even got to her now, and they could create a brand new kind of Darkspawn which could tip the entire favour of the war back against the Allied forces once it happens, because a new kind of Darkspawn, the way I see it, right, is that it doesn't all necessarily have to happen canon wise, because the players are in the world and they're affecting upon the world, and they could set off a chain of reactions that actually make Ferelden lose the war, that make the Darkspawn rule over everything. It's not a given, okay, that the Archdemon's going to be slain, that the hero Ferelden will win. None of that's a given here. Okay, the party could help to secure that to happen. At the moment, the hero Ferelden isn't set to win, and it's only really with the party's intervention, with their sub-help, that will allow that to happen. Okay, so it's more of sort of like, you know, how they play their part in the future events. But, you know, a new kind of Darkspawn like this would be very bad. So they decide, well, we're going to have to leave them. And he says, look, I've had to take these meals here to sustain me while I waited for you. Please leave me with the meals. So they decide, all right, you know, we'll leave you with them. And they got out straight away. Now, here's the thing, right? Here's the kicker. I decided that not only do they have to obviously fight her and her new souped up children, but they need to potentially get past Darkspawn forces as well. And there's going to be 4 ogres sent simultaneously, additionally, to transport her. That's right, to transport her on a platform on wheels. 4 ogres. Okay, and what I did was this. If they take their time getting back, they'll face 4 ogres. If they leave Freeport immediately, and there are no easy ships going out, so they have to pay for a very expensive travel to leave right now, because all the ships are coming in for Swagfest. If they do that, then there'll be 3 ogres. They would have saved time. Okay, if they take a ship to Ferelden, there'll be 3 ogres. If they take one of the faster ships to Amaranthine, around about that area, which is going to be a lot more expensive because it's out of the current course at the moment for where the ships are supposed to go, and pay all that extra just to go there, well, then there'll be 2 ogres. So you can see here, and they've paid the money up. So as it's set at the moment, there's 2 ogres. Now, once they hit land and they've gone off and they've sailed and they're fastly heading back to the Frostback Mountains to try and get down there and slay her before it's too late. Once they hit land, they're going to have one last opportunity to travel fast across the land and spend more money to do it. If they do that, there may be a chance of turning that 2 ogres into 1 ogre as a backup reinforcement. So, you know, it's really, it's down to the group to buy quicker, safer passage or not. It's up to them. And you know, how much crap is going to result from this, I don't know, but you know, that's what's about to happen next. It's the Primal Mother of Spiders and the Darkspawn and the group. It's an all against all shagfest. I'll see you at the table.